Welcome back from Breakout Time. We hope you've had a chance to join a live Q&A or watch one of the breakout sessions.
I do love a live Q&A.
Asking the questions or answering them?
Well, both. They both keep you on your toes, and I'm all about being agile.
I couldn't agree with you more, Walter.
So, do you want to tell everyone what's coming up next?
Well, we've got a pretty packed session, starting with a message from our community. Tracy Buckner is going to talk about communities of practice, and then she's going to lead a panel with JP Morgan Chase. I'm pretty excited about that.
And after that, I'll be back to talk about the new Ansible operator for Red Hat OpenShift and the Automation Services Catalog. I've got a lot to share on both of those topics, so stay tuned.
And then we're going to have our final demo of Ansible Fest 2021, Scale, and we're going to introduce Automation Mesh. I can't wait.
And then what's next?
Well, we wrap things up, Walter.
Already?
Yeah, Ansible Fest always flies by, and this year it feels like it's gone pretty quickly, but we're not going to think about that right now because we still have a lot of great content to check out.
Right. Focus on the now.
Exactly. We're going to focus on the now.
And with that, here's Tracy Buckner on Communities of Practice.
Hi, welcome to Building a Community of Practice. Today, we're going to talk about who I am, what communities of practice are, why you would want to have a communities of practice, and how you can start your very own community of practice. But first, allow me to introduce myself. I am Tracy Buckner, the Program Manager for Red Hat Global Communities of Practice. You can find me at my email address here or on LinkedIn. I grew up in Southern West Virginia, and that's where I first learned about community. I learned that neighbors' doors were always open. People were willing to share information and to be transparent with each other. I really loved growing up in a small community. So when I came to Red Hat and learned that Red Hat was open, I was really excited to hear more about that. I learned that there are 5 main principles for the open source way. Meritocracy, which means that good ideas can come from anywhere, regardless of where you are on the organizational chart. We believe in releasing early and releasing often. Transparency. Transparency is important when you're sharing information, especially in an automation journey, which touches so many different parts of the organization. Collaboration. Collaboration means collaborating across borders, opening silos, and sharing information with each other. And finally, community. Community is what we're going to talk more about today, specifically the communities of practice. Red Hat shares the power of open in their global communities of practice. There are many benefits to being in a community of practice. A community of practice is an opportunity to connect people who may not otherwise work together. Maybe they're from different regions, different locations, or just in different departments. It's what we like to say is opening silos. It also enables dialogue. It helps people to talk and share information. They feel comfortable because they're with a group of people who care about the same things that they do. It helps to simulate learning. So if you're an expert, you can share your knowledge. If you're a novice, you can learn from the experts. It's also a great place to encourage collaboration. It's the perfect place to share knowledge, problem solve, and come up with innovative ideas. It's also a great place to share your existing knowledge. You can share reference architectures, documentation, or ideas for the next step in the automation journey. It's also the perfect place to upskill. It's a great place to learn how to code new things that you didn't know, or to present at a conference or write a white paper. There are 5 main steps to building a community of practice: obtaining executive sponsorship, determining your mission and goals, assembling community leadership, establishing knowledge management and tooling, and engaging in regular communication. Obtaining an executive sponsor is important because an executive sponsor can help tie your community goals to the strategy of the organization. They're not really involved in the day-to-day implementation of the community, but rather support the goals and help you to identify what those goals should be. Speaking of goals, you want to make sure that you clearly define the missions and goals of your community. Find your why. Why are you there? What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve with your community? Ultimately, the goal should be leading to higher level goals and the strategy of the organization. But the real goal is to share knowledge and to open doors. You also want to make sure you assemble community leadership. We recommend at least 2 COP managers and more if you're working across regions. It's also important to have a core COP team that comes together to support the manager. This team will rise to the top. These are the people that are the most passionate about the topic. And also, you'll have members. You may have some members that are lurkers and don't participate much, but eventually they'll come along and share as well. You also want to make sure you establish clear knowledge management and tooling. We like to say, get the root out of there. Root stands for redundant, obsolete, outdated, and trivial information. You want to make sure that your information is timely and useful to your members. So by getting the root out, there's no redundant, obsolete, outdated, or trivial information available to them. Everything is current, up to date, and useful. And finally, you want to engage in regular communication. I would say this is the most important part of a community. Having regular meetings, chatting, emails, and even face-to-face. It's important to stay in touch with your community members and share information with them. I've quickly gone over the 5 steps for starting a community of practice: obtaining executive sponsorship, determining your mission and goals, assembling your community leadership, establishing clear knowledge management and tooling, and engaging in regular communication. It's really important to put all of these together when you're on the automation journey. Lots of people are going to come together in this journey, and you want to make sure that you can collaborate, innovate, communicate, and educate. And now I'm calling you to action. You've heard all about the powers of communities today, so share that with others. Ignite their passion. Engage, inspire, and lead others to do the same. I'll be sharing a free ebook with you that explains all of these steps in more depth, and feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn with any questions. I'll also be including resources for more information about open source, the open organization, and communities of practice. Thank you so much for joining me for how to build a community of practice. I hope you'll look forward to building one of your own. To learn more about how to build a community of practice and the success that we've seen in the organizations, please join me as I talk to Beth Boyd from JP Morgan Chase. Welcome back, and thanks for joining me to talk with Beth. I'm really excited to see communities of practice popping up all across industries. And Beth Boyd, our next guest, brings a passion for automation and community to JP Morgan Chase. I'm excited to talk with her and for her to share her journey with you. Beth, can you please introduce yourself and your team at JP Morgan?
Yes, I am the product owner of Ansible Automation at JP Morgan. And our team manages Ansible, and not only just with Ansible, we provide a framework for our customers to be able to create playbooks and execute those playbooks on the right hosts at the right time with the right entitlements with the proper controls and auditability necessary for our industry.
Can you walk us through how you got started with the communities of practice?
So how we got started in the communities of practice at JP Morgan is really inherently about the model that we have with our product. So a lot of automation teams that run Ansible, you put a request into their queue to build you a playbook, and then you get a playbook that you run, or they build your automation for you. Instead, we decided that would never scale at some place we are, right? So instead, we do an open source type model where anyone can create a playbook. So my team actually doesn't own any of the playbooks that run, but we run the Ansible infrastructure. And with that infrastructure, we bundle in all of the controls and necessaries around it, and the playbooks go through an approval process as well. So you can't just run just anything, of course, but that way we can have that big community. So from that, the community inherently started because it's a community of users that create Ansible where we are. It's really taken off. It's when I started, we had about 20 people consistently. Now we have about 200 that come to our regular meetings. But the really cool thing that we've done is we've done some small breakout groups that are really useful to certain product features that we're developing. So it's been really good. We have about 7,000 people that have subscribed to our group. So it's been great.
It's a really big community. It's great to hear that. What are some changes you've seen across the organization since you started the community?
I'd say our biggest challenge is growth and scale, right? We've changed quite tremendously since then. So in 2019, when I joined the team, we had approximately 3,000 playbooks. Today, we have 10,000 in our catalog. We had around 3,000 users in 2019. And today, we have over 50,000 uniquely entitled IDs that can run playbooks over 22 different countries, and we have over 500 playbook contributors that can contribute code to our group. The other big change and challenge that we've seen is that we at JP Morgan are moving to automation and infrastructure as code as a way of life. So in the beginning, people were just using Ansible to, how do I learn Ansible? And now our users know Ansible, and they're finding really interesting ways and applications on how to use Ansible, and they're even automating automation. So what I mean by that is there's a group that used Ansible for self-healing, right? An incident comes in, they do some interrogation, and they run a playbook to self-heal the environment. Could be something as simple as restarting a web service. Well, that portion to get onboarded to our incident queue is kind of manual. Well, they've automated the automation to onboard to the automation queue, right? So it's pretty interesting how people are taking things even one step further.
I know that COVID-19's had a major impact on lots of different organizations, and especially on how organizations communicate. How has your community been able to respond to that?
It hasn't been easy, right? It's been a challenge, right? Communities of practice don't sustain themselves. They don't stay together by themselves. They're not organic. It's not like you say, I'm going to have a community of practice and it just happens. So what we've had to do is really rethink how we engage with our users, what kind of topics we would cover, how do we get people wanting to come back? So we did hit a low point, but right now we're really bouncing back. We're trying some new ideas, and we're getting better engagement than we did, I think, this time last year. So it's always something you have to work at.
Yeah, I agree. I always say communication is the most important part of a community of practice. Have you gotten buy-in and support for your community across the organization?
Oh, easily, right? We have so much buy-in about it. JP Morgan is really great about people doing community and working together. We have kind of an interesting challenge where we have so many people with our open source contribution model is how do we engage with all of them and get the right people involved in our community. So it's really not just as much as people saying, yeah, I like Ansible, I'm interested in it, but how do we get them to be participants in it? So we do a lot of outreach to invite people to come to our community saying, hey, we really seen this cool stuff you've done. Please come to our community, work with other users. And it's also really important to engage with the stakeholders that may not be your best supporter at times. So we have some people that are kind of resistant to how things are going, or they had a problem, or they didn't like the way we did a feature. So it's been really important for us to engage with the naysayers as well as the big supporters, because they will make our product better. So what really happened with that is getting this kind of feedback from that kind of group is we had a surprisingly great supporter, right? So we had a problem one time. It wasn't our product's problem, but everybody thought it was. And this group came on with us. It's like, no, it's not the Ansible team, it's somebody else. And probably a few months before that, they would have said, nope, the Ansible team's problem. So it's pretty cool, like when you can get the people with their groups together to really form a team.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does the future look like for your community of practice?
That's a really good question. I don't think we know exactly what it's going to look like. As I mentioned before, we kind of struggled with keeping people engaged during COVID and everybody 100% working at home. In the past, we did a lot of location-based activities. We are a global organization across many different time zones in many cities, so we would try to do some events by location. That's not really a good way to engage our customers right now, because even when people are in the office, it won't be a full staff, right? So we're working on doing some things with breakout groups. We did those in the past that were very successful. We were trying to highlight new features or create features. Those were intimate, and we got a lot of good knowledge transfer. And we actually have people contribute code to our overall product as well. How we're going to get people more engaged, I don't know. Zoom burnout's a real thing. Like, it's a real thing. And I think that people choose not to join some of our user group meetings because it's one less Zoom call to go to. So I think our strategy starting now into next year is we're going to start pushing into other communities that exist. For example, a database administrator community, we're going to push into there instead of trying to pull them to come to ours. Not sure if it'll work, but it's about a community of practice, right? You have to keep trying new things and ask your customers and figure out how to engage your customers. And I'm positive that we'll continue to engage our community. Just don't know exactly how that's going to look in the future.
Right. I agree. It's always good to try different things and to figure out what works best for your community. I really thank you for joining us today, Beth. It sounds like you've cultivated a great community around automation at JP Morgan, and I really hope you enjoy the rest of Ansible Fest. Thanks again.
Great. Thank you, Tracy.
We just heard how building communities of practice make it easier to collaborate on automation. And communities of practice are important because no one should be working on automation in isolation. You need support and energy from the full organization to make automation efforts successful. As Tracy discussed, we're not working in isolation, but administrators are still responsible for running and maintaining environments, and some might be familiar with managing OpenShift, but less familiar with using automation in that context. Because container adoption is how business is currently working, we needed a way to bring these two realms together more easily. Ansible Automation Platform Operator and the Automation Services Catalog are tools that make it easier for people who are running OpenShift, containers, and cloud to use automation effectively in these environments. We want to take a moment now to talk about these new offerings and how they can help support your automation projects. Ansible Automation Platform Operator supports the full life cycle and supports true single-step deployments, upgrades, and backup restores to create an almost seamless experience in Red Hat OpenShift. It installs and upgrades Ansible Automation Platform running on Red Hat OpenShift. Alongside the Platform Deployment Operator, we have the Resource Operator, which helps users define, launch, and monitor automation in a cloud-native way. It supports managing Ansible Automation Platform job resources to interface with any infrastructure, whether Red Hat OpenShift clusters or traditional infrastructure. The Resource Operator is deployed as operators in an OpenShift deployment, where they communicate with Ansible Automation Platform APIs. The Ansible Automation Platform Resource Operator extends those control and management capabilities by meshing with the OpenShift API via operators and the operator framework. The Resource Operator helps Red Hat advance cluster management with Ansible Automation Platform deployment in addition to more general purpose capabilities. The Resource Operator also integrates with Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management for Kubernetes, combining cluster management and policy governance with automation content you've already developed in Ansible Automation Platform. You don't have to choose between the OpenShift Kubernetes native experience or an Ansible experience. You now have both. Now, you don't have to provision extra capacity for an OpenShift cluster. Instead, you have what you call container groups, a discrete control plane included as a controller feature that scales up as the OpenShift cluster to support jobs and can scale down as jobs go away. Ansible works best with OpenShift but it also works with other Kubernetes solutions. So you have flexibility if you're running something other than OpenShift in your environment. We've heard from folks who run automation in their organizations that they want more users to execute existing automation in a controlled and governed way. They also want a self-service view of playbooks to govern approvals and see how playbooks are executed across the organization. And they want to be able to replace existing automation with Ansible without the infrastructure management costs associated with an on-premise solution. To smooth day one and day two operations, we've launched Automation Services Catalog. Automation Services Catalog delivers pre-built automation to the developer and to the business user. It offers multi-level approval and role-based access capabilities and lets you extend automation self-service capabilities. Automation Services Catalog supplies the controls to track how automation is being used across your organization. It protects environments and lets you govern resource use and creates greater availability to push content and choose which content to govern. It also fosters greater collaboration by allowing each business owner to interact with others at a project or group level. Automation Services Catalog helps business users request new projects and tools on demand. Automation admins can supervise the execution of those requested resources without devoting tons of time and effort to fulfilling each request by creating applications from the ground up. Now, users and admins have more control over resource requests with a governed IT service management approach. Automation Services Catalog knows how to pull in the content that is available, but there's also an approval process that gives admins control over how automation is being used by others in your organization. For instance, IT Ops can use the catalog to govern continuous delivery integrations more effectively. These tools, the operator and services catalog, help make administrators' jobs easier and makes it easier for users to engage with automation. So with that user focus in mind, the next demonstration, Matt and his team are going to cover what that looks like from the perspective of the people who are using automation resources.
Hello and welcome to Ansible Fest 2021 virtual event. We're really excited for you to join us in this session. My name is Matthew Jones. I'm the Chief Architect of Ansible Engineering. In this session, we're going to be covering the Automation Mesh, which is a new feature for Ansible Automation Platform 2. We're really excited to show you. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Craig and Shane.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Craig Brunt, and I'm a Principal Technical Marketing Engineer for Ansible Automation Platform.
Hello, my name is Shane, and I am the architect for the Ansible Automation Controller team here at Red Hat.
Thanks, everybody, for joining the session. In this time, we're going to show and demonstrate Ansible Automation Mesh. While pushing a change to a single location is fairly straightforward, how do you push your automation to multiple sites that are located globally? The answer to this is Ansible Automation Mesh, a forthcoming new feature targeted for Ansible Automation Platform version 2.1. Automation Mesh gives your organization the ability to scale automation reliably, consistently, and rapidly across your IT estate, increase the execution capacity without the downtime, and allow you to natively build in fault tolerance and redundancy within your topology. Let's get back to the banana stand's slippery situation to show and demonstrate this. I'm part of the global operations team, and it's our responsibility to deploy the automation across Banana's IT estate. This includes data centers, remote offices, and these locations are usually separated by thousands of kilometers. Today, as part of that team, we need to deploy the banana worm patch as soon as possible. Some of the challenges we face to do so is the diverse geographic locations that are spread multiple distances apart, the varying degrees of connectivity available to us in some of our remote branches. To overcome these challenges, we need to be able to execute our automation as close as possible to the applications and infrastructure that needs it. In the previous demo, we saw Roger use Ansible Automation Controller to deploy the patch in the US data center. However, we need to be able to deploy that patch globally. Several of Banana Stand's branches are located in South Africa, and the Johannesburg data center is located thousands of kilometers away. And some of the South African remote branches themselves have limited or intermittent connectivity. Banana Stand has outgrown the competition, but with that, it also brings complexity to ensuring that we can deploy our automation throughout our estate. Despite these challenges, it is still our responsibility to be able to deploy the banana worm patch as soon as possible. Shane, you are the pro at this. Look, we have no time to do so. I really need your help. How can we deploy this patch in the Johannesburg data center?
Thanks, Craig. As Craig recapped for us, in the previous demo, you saw how we rolled out a security patch for the banana worm vulnerability to our main US data center. We're now going to see how we can use automation mesh to automate our workloads wherever in the world they may be. Some of you may be familiar with the isolated nodes feature in Ansible Tower 3. Automation mesh is the next evolution of that concept. In addition to being more flexible and easy to use, our initial testing is showing an overall 40 to 50% performance increase over isolated nodes. As we heard from Craig, our headquarters in the US is connected directly to our Johannesburg data center in South Africa. We're going to try to reuse the workflow that we created earlier to patch not only our main data center, but all of our locations around the globe. So to do that, you can see that I have created a new inventory here called Johannesburg Data Center. This represents all of our infrastructure at that location. You can see that I've also created a South Africa Johannesburg Data Center instance group that represents the execution capacity for this site. In order to use the workflow that we already ran, we're going to go in here and edit our workflow to not hard code this main data center US inventory value, but instead click this prompt on launch checkbox. We're going to save that. Now, when we launch it, we're going to have two options. We can run this against the main US data center, or like we're going to do now, we can run this against the Johannesburg data center. Let's launch that. Looks like it started running already. And yeah, you can see here that we're using the Johannesburg inventory that we selected, and it's running on the execution nodes there in Johannesburg as well.
So Shane, you're telling me we got the banana worm patch deployed in the Johannesburg data center without needing to configure a jump host? Well, I certainly won't need these anymore. Automation mesh brings automation to where the business needs it. This can span multiple geographies, topologies, and environments such as the data center, the cloud, and moving forward, the edge. In our case, it made it easy for us to deploy the banana worm patch in the Johannesburg data center, located thousands of kilometers away from the US site. And I'm glad to report it's working. However, Mr. Hacker has been paying close attention to this, and he realizes that we're actually deploying the patch faster than he anticipated. He decides to double his efforts to take full advantage of the exploit. Just as Mr. Hacker is doubling his efforts, we need to do the same and get it deployed to the South African remote sites as quickly as possible. Shane, you worked your magic in getting it to the Johannesburg data center. I need your help again. We need to get the banana worm patch deployed as quickly as possible to the South African remote sites. Please help.
All right, let's see what we can do. So our Johannesburg data center has 3 links to different remote branches around the country. Let's see how we can use automation mesh to reach these other locations. Here you've seen that I've created 3 new inventories to represent the locations around South Africa: Cape Town, Durban, and Kruger Park. Rather than running that same workflow 3 different times, we've gone ahead and created a patch banana branches workflow here that will in turn call the manage banana stack workflow for each location. So we're going to go ahead and launch that. And you can see that we're already patching all 3 of our remote sites in South Africa.
The value of automation increases by the amount of volume you can push through the platform. Automation Mesh allowed us to scale our execution capacity without the downtime, and in fact, reduce the amount of effort to do so.
Hey, Craig, I thought we were going to get lucky with that Kruger Park location today, but it looks like the link between Johannesburg and Kruger Park is down again.
It's always the Kruger Park branch. I have nightmares of that place. I don't know how many times we sent the ISP to try and go fix that. But hang on, didn't we install backup links from the Durban office specifically because of that bad link? Can't we use that? I mean, Shane, look, we've run out of time. You know, there's a lot of pressure on us to get this patch deployed. I don't know how you work your magic. Just please, please, please help us out here.
Funny that you mentioned that. I actually just got off the phone with the Durban office and they can connect to Kruger Park just fine. So I'm not sure what's going on with that link between Johannesburg and Kruger Park. Anyway, let's see what we might be able to do to have Automation Mesh route around the problem. So this is the inventory that represents the initial topology of our infrastructure that connects from our control plane in the US to Johannesburg, and then through Johannesburg to each of the 3 remote branches. Let's see what we might be able to change here in order to route around the problem. Here you can see that we've removed Kruger Park from the peers list under Johannesburg and then moved it underneath of the Durban group. That's all that needs to happen. We've rerun the installer, and without downtime, the topology of the mesh is reconfigured and we can start running our workload. All right, now that we've reconfigured our mesh topology, let's go ahead and try to run this playbook again. Everything looks good so far.
I hope so.
All right, it took a little longer than the Cape Town and Durban offices, but not much. I think we can call it a day.
I'm just glad it worked. Shane, this is unbelievable. I'm not going to have to phone that ISP that takes days to get out to the Kruger Park and try and fix this. You know what, Shane, I think you're right. We might even have a full weekend. Automation Mesh allows you to create logical links between execution nodes, giving you the ability to create fault-tolerant, redundant topologies native within the Ansible automation platform. This improves your uptime and service delivery to the business. Automation Controller acts as the centralized, secure point of communication throughout your Ansible automation platform topology. In our case, Automation Mesh allowed my team to create logical links to the Kruger Park using the backup links we had in the Durban office. Let's take a step back and realize the power that Automation Mesh provides. Banana Stand had a security breach that needed to be patched as soon as possible. Automation Mesh and the Ansible automation platform as a whole significantly reduced the incident response time. Now, use your imagination. How much more damage could Mr. Hacker have done taking advantage of that vulnerability? Not only that, it significantly reduced the overhead to scale our automation throughout the Banana Stand IT estate. As an example, we didn't need to configure a jump host to get to the Johannesburg data center. It provided our team the ability to natively build logical fault-tolerant links for us to be able to reach the Kruger Park branch office. Ansible Automation Mesh allows you to reliably, rapidly and consistently scale, as well as manage the execution capacity of your automation platform. We were able to firstly go and deploy this in the Johannesburg data center, which is located thousands of kilometers away. We were also able to speed up delivering the patch by using execution nodes at our remote offices. Now, we use this Nana stand as a simple example of a company that could use Ansible Automation Mesh. However, the benefits of Automation Mesh as well as Ansible Automation Platform are pervasive through an ever-growing amount of use cases specific to your organization. And with that, thank you for joining our session and enjoy Ansible Fest 2021. As a side note, if you're interested in finding out more how Ansible Automation Platform can help your security teams, go check out the security track. There's some great content on there.
Walter,
Katie.
this is it. We did it. Ansible Fest 2021 is finished. Another one for the books.
Yes, this was a big year. A huge year, in fact. Lots of important announcements.
I mean, Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform 2 alone, that was massive news.
Yeah, my adrenaline is still pumping from making that announcement.
And the demos, they're great, as always. And I feel like every year they keep getting better and better.
Oh, and the customers. Man, we're lucky to get to work with such amazing companies. These stories were so good, so inspiring.
And talk about inspiring, don't forget about all the community content. Hearing about the collaboration and the connections, working with the community is always awesome. I think we can call Ansible Fest 2021 a success. Walter, what are you doing over there?
Oh, sorry. I was just setting my countdown watch for Ansible Fest 2022.
Already?
Yep, you know what? You can never get too far ahead of these things. And plus, you already know I got a bad memory.
Yeah, you do.
And besides, I look forward to Ansible Fest the way that kids look forward to their birthday. I don't think anyone is alone in feeling that Ansible Fest is the most wonderful time of the year, you know, from an automation standpoint.
From an automation standpoint, you're right. And I hear where you're coming from. But for now, I just want to soak in all the Ansible Fest goodness from this year. I have an idea.
So are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I think I am.
Montage!
In this session, we're going to be covering the Automation Mesh, which is a new feature for Ansible Automation Platform 2.
I present Ishka, my very cute cat pictured here supervising my work.
Positive psychology has been proven scientifically to bring greater levels of innovation, higher profits, and perhaps most importantly of all, greater levels of well-being and less burnout for those working in the tech sector.
I really loved growing up in a small community, so when I came to Red Hat and learned that Red Hat was open, I was really excited to hear more about that.
In this demo, we're going to take collections and execution environments that you've seen before.
Wait, so Shane, we didn't have to configure a jump host to get this right? Well, I certainly won't need these anymore.
That was a good, no, great idea.
I know, right? But before we go, I want to give a shout out to all the customers, community members, presenters, demonstrators, and everyone else who helped make Ansible 2021 possible. And I want to say a special thank you to you, Katie, for being such a fantastic co-host.
Oh, well, thanks, Walter. Right back at you. It's been a lot of fun to actually have a co-host this year. I'd like to end things by thanking all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to spend time with us. In my opinion, there's no stronger, smarter, or more passionate community than the Ansible community. All of you contribute to building the best automation technology. You're the reason that we're here. After all, automation really is about people. My hope is that by the time Walter's timer goes off for the next Ansible Fest, we can do this in person. We can't wait to see all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Oh, sorry, my bad. I guess I need to check my settings.
Maybe you should automate it.
Oh, I see where you're going with that. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.